just a few frames here and there, so we get some variation, the movement there. Hey everyone, welcome to my new tutorial. Today we are going to create this cool loot chest animation, and I really hope you will enjoy this one. And if you do, please don't forget to leave that like. And if you're new to the world of 3D and Blender and you want to learn in the fastest and most effective way, be sure to check out my courses. I carefully designed them to take you from beginner skills through low poly illustration all the way to full character illustration, textured environments. There is even a little bit of sculpting there, hard surface modeling. So if you're interested, please check out the link in the description. Let's now jump right into an Blender file, and first of all, let's delete the light and the cube. So drag a selection, press X and choose delete. And now we'll create the base for our chest. So let's press Shift A, let's add mesh and plane. And now we tab into the edit mode, press S, then X and scale it on X axis like this. And now let's press E and extrude it up just like that. And now press 2 for edge select. Select this edge, hold Shift, select the other one and press Ctrl B to bevel. And now increase the number of cuts with the mouse wheel to something like, okay, this looks just fine. And now to make things easier, let's press Ctrl R and create a cut here in the middle. If you have more cuts there, reduce the number with the mouse wheel, left click and right click to release in place. And now let's enable X-ray view, select everything on the other side, press X and delete vertices. And now we are going to go to modifiers panel and let's add mirror modifier. And let's disable X and enable Y and choose clipping. That will make it easier to make this symmetrical and, edit only the necessary parts without the need to edit on both sides. And now press 1 for vertex select. Let's rotate a little bit and we'll join some of these vertices. So let's select this one, hold Shift, select the other one and press J to join. And we'll do this for these other pairs as well. And make sure you're pressing J, not F, because we want to cut into the geometry. And now let's modify the shape a little bit. So let's press 3 for a side view. Drag a selection around all the vertices on the left side. And we'll press Ctrl, Alt and Shift and S to enable shear. And just shear it like this. So it's a little bit more cartoonish, stylized like this. And now let's look from the front by pressing 1 on a numpad. Select the bottom verts and press S then X and scale them on X axis like this. So we get this nice stylized shape. And now we'll reuse some of the geometry. So let's press 3 for face select. Alt click this loop right here. Press Shift D to duplicate. Right click to release in place. And P and enter to separate. And you will see the new object gets created. So let's tab out. Select the new object. And first of all, let's disable clipping here. Tab into the edit mode, and we can go for edge select again by pressing 2, alt click this loop and press G twice so you can slide it back like this. And now hold Alt and select this loop right here, press G twice, but additionally press Alt to enable sliding outside of the bounds like this. And now press 3 for face select, select the bottom face, press X and delete faces. And now I want to separate this even further. So let's drag a selection around the faces on top here. Press P and separate the selection. That will again separate this into a new object. And here we can press A and press Alt E and extrude faces along normals and extrude them outside like this. And now we can select the inner faces. So let's select this one, hold Shift and select the other one. And you can see these little dots. If you click near them, they will select the respective face for those dots. And now press Alt S and just push it outside a little bit like this. And additionally, we can press G then Z and move it down. Okay, now tab out and let's select the top part. Tab into the edit mode and we'll do the same thing. So press A and Alt E and extrude along normals. We don't need to be too precise here. So something like this. And if you want, you can additionally press S to enable even scaling. And now select this face right here on the inside. And we'll hold Control and select these other ones all along the loop until we get the last one. And now press Alt S and just shift it outside a little bit. And now we can press 1 for vertex select. Select these outside vertices, hold Shift, select these on the other side, press G then Z and move them down a little bit to reduce that slope there. Okay, something like this looks fine. And now tab out, let's select the chest again and we'll separate some geometry here as well. So tab into the edit mode, and we'll select all of these vertices on top, and press P and separate selection. So we split the chest into two parts. And now with the bottom part, we can press Ctrl R and create two loop cuts here. So just increase number of cuts with the mouse wheel, and left click and right click to release in place. And now we can press 3 for face select, alt click this top loop, and we can press Shift D to duplicate this, right click to release it in place. And again, we'll press P and separate the selection. Tab out and select that new object to create some metal trim around here as well. So tab into the edit mode, press A to select all, and alt E and extrude along normals. Something like this should be enough. And now we can select the inner faces. So hold Shift, select the faces on the inside, and alt S to extrude them a little bit inside like this. And just to be safe, tab out, press A to select all objects, tab into the edit mode, press A to select all geometry, and Shift N to recalculate normals. Now we can tab out, and here we can adjust this overlap. So tab into the edit mode here, press 2 for edge select, alt click this loop, and just press S to scale it inside a little bit like this. Tab out, and now select the top part of the chest, tap into the edit mode, and we'll separate some of these parts. So with the edge select active, alt click this loop right here and hold alt and shift and select these other ones. And we'll press V to just rip this apart, and we can leave it in place. No need to separate this into a new object yet. And now let's select this, press V to rip this apart as well. And now let's select this one here, hold shift and select these others. Here we need to include 3 faces, and select the one on the other side. And again, we'll press V to rip this apart. So effectively, we now separated these parts of the geometry within the one object, but they act as a separate geometry, which will help us to create these wooden gaps. So let's tab out and select the bottom, and we'll do the same there. So tab into the edit mode, alt click this loop, hold alt and shift, select the other one, and press V again to rip this apart, and right click to release in place. And now we can add some modifiers. So tab out, and we can disable the X-ray view. And first of all, let's add solidify modifier. They'll create some depth there. We can help ourselves to see it by enabling the X-ray view. Let's increase the thickness a little bit like this. Doesn't need to be too much. And now let's add bevel modifier. And you will see now these gaps are visible here. So let's increase the segments to 2 and go to shading and enable harden normals. And now we can just right click shade smooth. No need to do auto smooth. This is Blender 4.1. So the smoothing is managed automatically when you enable harden normals now. So let's do the same thing up here. So we'll select this object, add solidify modifier, increase the thickness a little bit. Let's see how it looks. And don't worry about these overlaps, they won't be visible anyway. And now let's add that bevel modifier, increase the segments, let's reduce the amount a little bit, and let's go to shading and enable harden normals, right click and shade smooth. So this is what we get here. And now we'll just add the bevel modifier to the metal parts. So let's select those, hold shift and select the top part as last, and just scroll down, click here, copy to select it. They'll transfer the modifier to all of the other objects, right click and shade smooth. So this is our basic stylized chest, but to make it look a little bit better, let's create something like lock here in front. So select this beam here, tab into the edit mode, press 1 for vertex select, select this vertex, hold shift S and snap cursor to select it. Now tab out and let's press shift A and we'll add a plane. Tab into the edit mode, press S to scale it down, and R, then Y and 90 to rotate this 90 degrees. Let's make it even smaller here. We can press G then Z, move it down a little bit. And let's just press Ctrl B, then B to enable vertex bevel. We can reduce the number of cuts to 1. Do something like this here. Now press A to select all, extrude. Press A, Shift N to recalculate normals, and G then X to move it back a little bit. So we get something like this. Okay, tab out, and again, we'll just hold Shift, select one of the beveled objects, and transfer the bevel modifier, and shade this smooth. And I think this will look just fine for a stylized chest. Now let's just parent everything so it works. First of all, let's select the bottom, objects, hold shift, select this one so it's highlighted yellow, press Ctrl P and parent to object. And now let's do the same with the top objects, hold shift, select this part here, press Ctrl P and parent. But here we'll need to move the origin point to make opening chest a little bit easier. So let's rotate this, tab into the edit mode, select this vertex right here, hold shift S, cursor to select it, tab out, and now just select the top part, right click and set origin to 3D cursor. And now if you press R then Y, you can see you can easily just open this up and down. And now I can see there's some visible overlap here. So to fix this, select this bottom part, tab into the edit mode, and you can see this is still flat and planar because we have the solidify modifier there. Let me enable X-ray view. So we can just select these top 4 vertices, press G twice and slide them down a little bit. And now let's disable the X-ray view. And to make this look a little bit better, we can select this part, tab into the edit mode, press 3 for face select, select these top faces and press G then Z and move them up a little bit like this. And I think this will be enough here. Now we can select this, press Alt R to reset the rotation. And additionally, we can hold shift, select this part, press Ctrl P and parent the object so the whole chest can be moved like this. Now with the chest ready, we can start some animation. So first of all, let's go to the output settings and let's change the frame rate to 30. And for the frame end, let's choose something like 120. For now, you can do that here as well. So this is our timeline. Let's expand it a little bit. But before we proceed, I want to add some content into the chest that can be revealed with the animation. So let's create something like a crystal. So let's hold Shift S and snap cursor to world origin. Let's press Shift A and we'll add mesh and cylinder. Now let's modify the number of vertices to 6 here. And let's tab into the edit mode, scale it down, let's say like this. And now we can press slash on a numpad to go to the local view so the rest of the chest doesn't get in the way. We can press S, then Z and scale this up like this. Press Ctrl R and create a loop cut about here and press S to scale it up. And to make it look a little bit more interesting, we can press A to select all and go and choose bisect here and just create the slash like this, clear inner and fill. If the arrow points the other way, you will need to clear the outer. And now let's cut on top. Now you can see it points up, so we clear the outer part and choose fill. And now we can press A, S then Z and scale it on the Z axis. And if you want, you can add some smaller cuts like here, for example, and here. But I think this will look just fine. So let's adjust the proportions a little bit. Now we can tab out. Let's hit slash to exit the local view, press G then X to move it outside. And again, we'll go to the modifiers panel and add the bevel modifier, increase segments to 3, and go and choose hard normals, right click and shade smooth. Now this will bevel by angle by default here. So let's switch this to none. So we have all the cuts there. And let's reduce the amount a little bit like this. Okay, and now we select this part right here, press R, then Y, open it. And we'll move this inside like this and make it smaller. And now let's just duplicate some of these around. So I'll press Alt D so they're linked duplicates and press R twice to rotate. We don't need to be too precise here. This is just to fill the chest with some content, so it's kind of visible from the angle above. Okay, and now some of these, they'll be on top, and those will kind of, let's make them smaller, and those will kind of jump out when open. So let's press Alt D a few more times and duplicate these. Okay, something like 5 should be enough. And optionally, of course, you can press R then Z twice to rotate them locally around their Z axis, so their positions are not so uniform and you get some variation. And finally, let's just select the first one here, hold Shift, select the last one, hold Shift, select the chest, press Ctrl P and parent. So now let's play with an animation. I will again select this one, press Alt R to reset the rotation. And now let's look from the camera by pressing 0 on a numpad. And now I want to move the camera a little bit so we have different perspective. So let's press N for a side panel, go to view and enable camera to view. So now we can use our viewport controls to position the camera. Something like this should be enough. Now let's not forget to disable this. Go to the output settings and let's modify the resolution to something like 1600 to 1200. Select the camera again, press G and Z twice to move it a little bit closer, and then G to position it around like this. Now I think I will adjust this a little bit more. Something like this. And now let's press Shift A and we'll add the plane that will be our background. So let's press S to just scale it up. Press R then Z, rotate around Z axis a little bit. Tab into the edit mode. Select the edge in the back and press E then Z and extrude it. Now select this edge and press Ctrl B to bevel and increase number of cuts so we get the infinite background effect. Now tab out, right click and shade smooth. And while we're at it, let's press Ctrl B to limit the render preview only to camera bounce. Go to render settings, I will switch this to cycles and GPU and enable denoising and reduce the samples to something like 128. Should be enough for quick animation preview. And now let's press Shift A and let's add some basic light. Press G then Z and move it up. And let's make it a little bit stronger, something like 150. And let's see how this looks. So press Z and choose render preview. And let's press G then Z, move it up even higher. And let's make it larger so we have this nice soft shadows. And I think for a basic preview, this will be enough to kind of assess how the animation looks. Now we can hit Z, go back to solid view so we get performance in the viewport. And let's select the chest and we'll create the first keyframe. So let's go to the item menu here and let's insert the Z scale keyframe. So right click here and insert single keyframe. And let's insert the Z location keyframe as well as Z rotation single keyframe. These are the ones that should be enough for the chest. And now I want the chest to kind of spring down before it jumps. So let's go to frame 5 and let's hold Shift and reduce the Z scale here. Right click and insert single keyframe. So we'll just now block out the animation a little bit. And now it jumps out. Should be fairly quick. So let's try something like frame 20 or even something like 15. And there it should have the scale of 1, maybe even a little bit more, maybe something like 1.1. Right click and insert single keyframe. But at the same time here the jump starts. So right click and insert another single keyframe for the location on Z axis. Move to the frame 50 and here we can press G and Z, move the chest up. Now right click and insert single keyframe. So this is what happens now. And at the same time, I want this to rotate. So let's move to frame 5. And additionally to the scale, we can rotate this to the other side a little bit. Right click, insert single keyframe. And then when it jumps, it can go around full 360. So let's insert like full 360. Right click and insert single keyframe. Then it will kind of linger, but we'll deal with that with the animation curves. So now this will fall back down, let's say frame 35 or something like that. Now let's go to 30 and let's just set the Z to 0. Right click, insert single keyframe. This can stay at 360. The scale should go up here a little bit as it goes down. So let's go to like 22. Increase the scale on Z, right click and insert single keyframe. And here as it lands down, right click, insert single keyframe. And let's move 5 frames, move this to like 0.8 or 0.9 should be enough. Insert single keyframe and then back to 1. So this is our animation blockout for the chest. Now we play back. You can see the movement is a little bit janky, but we'll deal with that a little bit later. Let's continue the animation blockout. First of all, we want this to be a little bit longer. So let's select these keyframes, press G, then X, and move them a little bit away. Okay. And now as it jumps out, we want this to open. So as it goes up here, it can start open around frame 12. So we can select this, and that will be the Y rotation. So right click, insert single keyframe, and around frame, and at frame 50, it's already open. So let's do like 17 and just open it up. Right click, insert single keyframe. And here, as it lands down, will collapse. So let's hold Shift, select the other object so we can see the keyframes there. And at 40 it lands. So here we'll right click, insert single keyframe, and shut it down. So let's reset this to 0, right click and single keyframe. And one more thing I want to do, as it jumps up, I want it to tilt a little bit so we better see the content. So let's go at frame like 10 and insert the rotation Y as well. So insert single keyframe, and at 20, we'll adjust the Y rotation a little bit like this. Right click and insert single keyframe, and then around 30 it should be back. So let's reset this to 0, right click and insert single keyframe. Okay, never mind the timing, again we'll deal with that. So let's press Ctrl Tab here in the timeline so we get into the graph view, and let's play with the animation timing. So we can expand the tracks, and first let's hide everything here and enable only Z location. Now select everything here, press period on a numpad to zoom in. Here we'll see the timing for the jump. So I want this to be more aggressive here when it starts. So let's select this control point right here, press V, and we'll change this to free so we can freely move this up. So we get this sudden movement up. And now when I play back, this part with the reveal is a little bit too short. So we'll need to expand the animation a little bit. Let's select this control point, press Shift D, then X, and just move it a few frames so it kind of stays there a little bit. And then we can place it a little lower and adjust the angle here to make this nice and smooth. Okay. And here, this can be a little bit more sudden as well. Okay, let's adjust the rest of the animation so we can hide the Z location, and let's look at the Z scale. So here we want this to be more sudden, more springiness there. And here as well, it should be more jumpy. Now the touch point is around here, so we'll need to move these back. And this will need to be a little bit more steep as well. Or if you want, you can remove this keyframe and select this one, press T and choose bounce, and that will introduce this bouncy effect here. And let's bring it sooner here. Okay. Now let's have a look at the Z rotation. I think that's fine. So let's adjust the Y rotation because I think that's the one that needs the most work. So definitely we'll need to rotate this sooner, and we can make this more steep as well here. And let's go a little bit sooner. And more smooth. As you can see, by adjusting these curves a little bit to make them a little bit more smoother, more snappy, you can really adjust the timing. I think the animation is too long, of course, so let's change it to something like 70, so we can loop it nicely. Okay, now let's select the top part, and again, back to the curve editor, and let's play with this rotation here. So again, press period on a numpad. Now here, as it opens, again, we need to make this more snappy and sudden. Like this. Maybe a little bit sooner. And here, as it lands down, we need to shut down. So somewhere here, so let's move this keyframe, and it will need to be really steep. So let's select the control point, press V, choose free, and we can move this here so the shutdown is much more linear. And we need to move this sooner, of course. So something like this. Yeah. I quite like this so far, so let's play with the camera a little bit. I want the camera to follow the chest a little bit. So let's select it and let's insert keyframe for the X rotation. Right click and insert single keyframe. And as we are around here, we want the camera to follow. So press R, then X twice, and just move it up a little bit. Right click and insert single keyframe. We can Control and Tab to switch this back to the timeline. And now we'll just select the first keyframe, Shift D, and duplicate it here. Okay, let's see how this looks rendered. Okay, I quite like it. So let's now introduce some secondary movements here and there. This will be really subtle as this opens. I want these few to jump out a little bit. So let's go to like frame 15 and select some of these, and let's right click and insert single keyframe for the Z location. And here around frame 25, it should go up a little bit. Right click and insert single keyframe, and then back down here. So let's just select the first one, Shift T, and duplicate it here. And maybe we can move it a little bit sooner, so you can just drag selection around the keyframes and move them with G. Okay, and again, we'll play with the graph, so Control Tab here, press A and period on numpad. And now here, this jump will be a little bit more sudden. And let's make this more smooth here. And here it can land more harshly as well. And it can happen a little bit later. I really like this, so let's now move around here and we'll duplicate this animation to some of these. I think that will be enough. Now hold Shift, select this one. We'll go Control L and link animation data. So now all of these have the same animation, but I want to shift the animation a little bit. So now as they're all selected, let's go Object, Relations, make single user, and Object Animation. So now the animations are separated, and we can select some of these and move them around a little bit. Maybe some of these can happen sooner. Just a few frames here and there, so we get some variation the movement there. So let's look from the camera and let's play it back. Okay, and the next thing I want to do is to animate a light inside the chest. I want this to really shine when it opens. So let's go to frame 1, let's press Shift A and we'll add a point light. And let's move it up a little bit inside the chest, something like here. And now hold shift and select the chest, press Ctrl P and parent and keep transform. So now within the chest we have the point light that will move with our chest. And now let's preview the rendered preview. And now let's increase the power of this to something like 500. This doesn't look like much now because these are not transparent, but select one of these crystals. Let's go to the material settings, create a new one. Let's call this crystal. Now let's go to transmission and increase the weight all the way to 1. And we can leave the roughness at around 0.4 or 0.5. But let's increase the coat so they're glossy. So let's increase the weight here. And now we can move the point light a little bit. Because we don't want to depend only on the transmission there. And I think 500 is too much, so let's try something like 50. Okay. And here I want the light to go stronger. So here as it starts to open, it's okay that there's a little bit of light. So let's right click and insert frame here. But here, as it's fully open, we should do something like 150. Right click, insert keyframe. Then just select the first one, Shift D to duplicate. And here as it shuts, it should fall down. And again, we can Control Tab and adjust the curve for the point light. So again, this will be a little bit more sudden. Something like this. And maybe the 50 is too much here. So press G, then Y. Let's go even lower here. So there is some light. Something like this. Okay. Okay, I really like this. So let's add some materials here. Let's select these parts. They'll be like metal parts. So let's add that material and increase the metallic all the way to 1. Here as well. And this part too. And maybe we can make it like a bronze or something. Or golden a little bit, maybe a little bit darker. And let's reduce the roughness. And now here, this will be like some wooden material here with roughness all the way to 1. Or you can later add some texture here, which I'll probably do for the final animation, but this is not the scope of this tutorial right now. So something like this should work nicely. And here we can play with the color for these crystals. So something like purple will probably work nicely with the golden color here. And now let's select the background and we can give it some color as well. Maybe make it a little bit darker. Let's now select this light here, press Shift D to duplicate, move it to the side here. And let's make it smaller. Something like this, so we get these nice reflections there. And then here in the back, we can add some point light. And let's say something like 500 should be enough. And let's play with the color here so we get some nice background here. Okay, and for the background we can go with the roughness all the way to 1 and reduce the specular IOR a little bit. Okay, and now in the render settings, let's go to color management. Let's set the contrast to high and we can play with the exposure. And the rest of this will be basically figuring out the texturing and lighting for this. But the focus of this tutorial was the animation and the modeling. So if you're interested in, lighting setups, you can watch my other tutorials. The playlist is in the description, so you can find the one you like the most and try to replicate the lighting setup for this animation. So that's it for this animation, and I really hope you enjoyed this one. And if you did, please don't forget to leave that like. And if you're new around here, hit that subscribe. Thank you all for watching and have a wonderful day.